Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Welcome to the first Visiting Writers Series event of 2025. Thank you all for being here on a very cold night. It's a good place to be on this night. I'm very happy to welcome Ray Levy and Jessica Alexander. I heard Jay and Jessica. Ray and Jessica read last year in Kansas City at a reading organized by Ryan Scrabelak, who read here last spring. And I knew I wanted to host them here at Carthage at that point. Both writers make fiction at the intersection of critical theory, queer theory, memoir, poetry, and many other kinds of writing. I'll say a little more about each of them before their readings, but first I have a couple of announcements. First, please refrain from cell phone use. Make sure your phone is silenced for the reading. Thank you. And then two exciting events on Thursday, 2 days from now at 5:30 in 217A upstairs. Professor Casey Caldwell will lead an evening of Shakespeare scene readings. Anyone attending will be invited to read scenes from Shakespeare's The Winter's Tale, a play from later in his career. Casey writes about love, jealousy, and exiting pursued by a bear. You will also learn about the English department's annual trip to Stratford, so next fall to Stratford, Ontario to see a bunch of plays at the festival there. And about the English Players, a group of amateur actors open to all members of the Carthage community. This spring, English Players will be led by Professor Caldwell, who in addition to being a Shakespeare scholar, has deep experience as an actor and director of Shakespeare's plays. And that group will rehearse and perform scenes from A Winter's Tale. Everybody's welcome, no auditions, everybody gets a part. And you can be involved to the degree that you are able. So you could be in one scene if that's what you can do. Encourage you all to join us. And then on March 4th, the second and next event in the Visiting Writers Series, come back right here at 6 o'clock for a reading by Jared Stanley, a poet and writer who collaborates frequently with artists in interesting ways. So come back for that. All right. Our first reader tonight is, come in. Hello. Is Jessica Alexander. Jessica Alexander's novella, None of This is an Invitation, co-written with Katie Jean Schinkel, was published by Astrophil Press in summer of 2023. Her story collection, Dear Enemy, was the winning manuscript in the 2016 Subdo Prose Contest. And there's copies of that book over here in the pop-up Woodland Pattern bookstore hosted by Chuck Zevelton. See him after the reading. Her collaborative project, co-written with Vicky Now, That Woman Could Be You, came out with Blazebox in April 2022, and that is also available over there. Her Gothic novel, Agnes, We're Not Murderers, is forthcoming from Clash Books in 2026. That's the book, well, maybe I say this, I talked about that later. I won't get ahead of myself. That's the book I heard, though. It's very exciting. Her short fiction has been published in journals such as Fence, Black Warrior Review, Pank, Denver Quarterly, The Collagist, and Diagram. She lives in Chattanooga, Tennessee. It was the excerpt just read from the forthcoming Agnes, We're Not Murderers, I want to say that as many times as possible, with its fascinating, horrifying, and hilarious combination of the Gothic novel and the footnotes of a dissertation, or at least the Gothic form of a dissertation, that made me want to invite her to Carthage. To that experience, I've since added the very different experience of reading That Woman Could Be You, which we're reading in the chapbook class, co-authored with Vicky Now, which is a kind of double helix in which new grief and new love, those twins, wind around one another in the two columns of the text, the two bodies of the women, and the many loves and griefs of the book. It's a wide and wild range, and I'm excited to hear entirely new writing that Jess has for us tonight. Please welcome Jessica Alexander.
Thank you, Rick, for that wonderful introduction, and thank you also for inviting us to be here tonight. Does this sound good?
You can move that stand forward if it's in, like, would be in a better, yeah.
Can also project. Everybody hear me well?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So thanks so much, Rick, and thank you so much, Chuck, for bringing the books. And thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight. I'm gonna get some water. All right. So this is a new project, and it is kind of a mystery novel that's sort of an anti-mystery novel, but I'm sort of trying to write in the style of noir in certain ways. And I guess it's a professor who's the protagonist who just got fired from her job, but she's still doing this administrative work that is kind of like sleuthing. All right. I was sitting in the office looking at a file, but my mind, was elsewhere. It always is. For 2 years, I dreamt of my friend Dahlia. In the dream, I'm on a busted payphone, and Dahlia's on the other end. She accuses me of being half dead and dull, a walking dildo. So I slam the phone down. And just like that, fistfuls of quarters splash out the coin slot. It was a message, obviously, but what did it mean? Shortly after that, I got fired and started moonlighting as a private eye. Do I like it? Sure. It's slow. It's fine. I sit in this professor's office, my old office, while he attacks the sky. He hates how it functions rhetorically. The sky is the limit, high in the sky, blue skies. I think his anger is misdirected. You're missing the point, he tells me. Meanwhile, I open a folder. I spread the contents all over his desk. That's what I was doing when Robin Knott strode into the office. The door was open, so Robin didn't knock. She walked in like a gust of wind, and I rose to meet her. It all felt very natural. Her hair was tied in a loose knot. I said, "It's good to see you." Like I knew her. Why? I'd never seen her in my life. She looked to be in her early 30s, only she had this quality, the confidence, I guess, of someone who just so deftly mounts a horse. It was a very specific style of confidence. She seemed just like a girl I'd seen before. It's this New York thing I brought Midwest with me, the way I put my eyes on someone's face and just drift away, like I don't even see them. She was familiar and vague, like static on a TV set, coming slowly into focus. It was after she left that I began to suspect that it had not been a kind of girl who'd grown familiar, it had been her. I grew increasingly certain of this, like a blurred figure forever trapped in the background of some other family's photograph. I was sure she'd long lived at the periphery of my vision. What I mean is, she'd not only been the paradigm, but the individual instances I filed away in my mind. In short, she'd left a singular impression, and my awareness of this had been hindered. By what, I wondered? After our encounter, vaguely, almost expectantly at first, I began to look for her. For instance, in the elevator, at the School of Art and Design. I was sure my tired eyes had habitually drifted over her. Or the cafe where every day I bought a paper and a coffee. Maybe it was the Angry Bard. For all I knew, she was my neighbor. It was an odd feeling, even for me, how badly and suddenly I wanted to see her. I thought I saw her everywhere. I was starting to feel a little dazed, drifting in and out of sunlight, with a slight throb in my temples, like a horse had kicked me gently in the head. And just when I suspected she'd sprung from my brain like a fever dream, I saw her again. You probably want me to rewind. Fine. Let's start in July. It's July. There's this guy named Dick Crummy. He's this ubiquitous figure, a fixture at the Angry Bard, where I moonlight as a barback. Dick had a sallow complexion and the sturdy build of a Prohibition-era boxer. He fixed an unlit cigarette to his lower lip and it bobbed up and down when he talked. Around that time, he was in romantic agony and drinking a lot. It wasn't erotic exactly, it was psychological. He was manic. I could tell he liked feeling this way, his mind on fire. He wasn't proud of his actions. That's how he began. I wasn't really interested. I was drifting until he said he'd broken into her house. He'd read her diary, I said. She never mentioned him in the diary. That is, not directly, not consciously. Still, he was there, so he said. He was everywhere, in a word choice or a turn of phrase, an object or an image. He simply had to show her this, to help her decode it. Like a dream, like psychoanalysis, eventually she'd see herself, a wealth of things she felt and meant without ever knowing it. This is such an old story, I said. Do you know how old that story is? And to my surprise, he squinted into the mid-distance and started counting on his fingers. It was 1997, he said. It was hard to hear him. The bar was loud that night, and he was drunk and spoke like a dish rag had been stuffed inside his mouth. I felt exhausted, intrigued, and implicated. It was complicated. So let me get this straight, I said. You read a girl's diary in 1997, and now you want to talk about it? No, he said. That's how old the story is. Dick was in construction. He flipped condemned buildings. He had a reputation for stealing at work. Small things at first, tools, lumber, copper, then a bulldozer. Now he works for himself. So of course I had a file on Dick Crummy. Don't ask me why. I just put things in files, and it happened to be on my desk when Robin arrived. My boss went missing, she said. I looked up. She didn't sound upset. The sun was setting. A beam of light shone into my office, and I was sort of blinking and smiling stupidly into it. Was she holding an armful of books? She was. And in her easy and haphazard manner, she stashed them on the windowsill. The stack, in fact, toppled to the floor, and we laughed at that. She stooped to retrieve them, and after rising, hovered momentarily beside my swivel chair. You're really good at this, she said. I wasn't. And naturally, I loved her for telling me otherwise. I was like an ignition that couldn't catch, modestly protesting, when she pointed at my desk. That's him, she said. I lifted the folder. This? I said. And I can't say why, but we both laughed. She sat down and I watched her confident and careless self-arrangements. It occurred to me later that I loved it, that I couldn't say really what it was. I loved how she carried herself, I guess. I never wanted to forget it. It felt oddly as if I already had. She seemed like something from the past, some world that no longer existed. I leaned forward. She was talking, and I was so fully immersed. Do you know what happens when you're fully immersed in someone else? You become charming. And that's exactly what happened. You have this tendency, I said, to qualify everything. You keep saying, I like Dick well enough, but is it true? Do you like him well enough, or do you not like him at all? Sure, I'm sure I do, but you know, he's a liar. He says he builds houses, but actually he does nothing. I keep kind of moving in and out. Is that okay? Do you hear me okay? Oh, that's fine. Okay. At times like this, gossip is soothing. I feel almost like a person again, swaddling this shuddering dread and bouncing it like a baby on my leg. I confessed of late, my mind was made of barbed wire. It had been that way for months. She took it in stride. Of course it is, she said. You work at a university. You peddle the college premium myth. But I don't, I told her. They fired me. She tapped her foot. Her eyes stayed locked on mine. It felt like that trick in documentaries when the camera rolls a beat or two after the interview ends. She wanted to know how I'd manage the silence, if I'd go on. It's your friend Dahlia said. It's like your friend Dahlia said, she muttered. This society is dead. But Dahlia didn't say that. Not publicly, at least. I did. It was the title of my dissertation. This society is dead. So naturally, the accusation stunned me. I felt my face go slack, and all my charm plummeting endlessly into a vast and terrible nothingness. I could feel her smirk spreading. At least I thought I could. I blinked, and her eyes were wide and kind, just like it never happened. Had I imagined it? I cleared my throat for the pivot. So you're worried about Dick? I said. That and, she shrugged, he owes me money. She said this with a smile so sweet, it was simply enthralling. We started again. Still with me?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Did you murder him for money? I asked. She looked so earnest and surprised. It was intimate. Me, she said, and her lips curled slyly. She laughed. She scanned the bookshelf. Descartes, Heidegger, de Man. Those aren't my books, I blushed. They're my partners. I felt as though we'd been through something, like we'd sifted through some seasons together, like a terrible winter had passed. and it was August all over again. She'd been sitting in a heavy swivel chair with wheels, an oaky old thing, a piece of shit that shrieked each time she shifted. He lacks moral clarity, I said. He reads books he doesn't understand. Didn't he write one? She asked. Yes, Sky. That's the book's title, I told her. He hates it. His book? No, the sky, I say. You see, he lacks moral clarity, she said, and his sanctified hush enshrouded us. He thinks personification is the root of all evil. He's post-human. She looks over her shoulder at the door, which is open. So we lean in, closer, until our foreheads are nearly inches apart. Our eyes meet, and she whispers to me. He encountered his complicity. So he turned humanity into a straw man, just to be better than someone. Her eyes grow wide. You see, in sacred moments such as this, time gets autoerotic. It opens and folds on itself. It slows, moves quick, and slows again. She flings herself back in her seat. There's this frenetic energy, a stuttering heartbeat. Suddenly, she's fidgeting and giddy. She grows still and says very calmly, "Have we met?" My partner appears in the doorway. The office is his. He's thin-limbed and vague like a field of grain. His fine hair is shyly receding. He has a boy's face that is aged. He looks like he might tell me it's his office, and then he sees Robin and sort of settles like dust on the windowsill. He picks up her notebook and starts flipping through it, and it's just so irritating. But Robin is unfazed because he's like that. He's like a fly zipping stupidly around your head, and you're irritated but magnanimous. You think, I'll let it live. Meanwhile, Robin's leaning forward, looking at my face. There's something so open about her gaze, it frightens me. I look away. A student of my partner shuts his left eye, like he's trying to remember the name of a quarterback or an actor. He snaps and points, art history. And her eyes shift lazily to his face. No, she says. I dropped out. She could hate him, my partner, couldn't she? I'm thinking, wouldn't it be easy? But I don't think the option interests her. What purpose would it serve? And like that, I've decided something about her. She's pragmatic in the most haphazard way. Amber Fields Luxury Apartments. Her eyes brush impartially over my partner's face and return to me. That's where he said he'd be when I went over that morning. He owed me the equivalent of an old Toyota. And he had an old Toyota, so I asked him to sign it over. He said, sure. I said, when? Was he drunk? No, he never drank at home. He was coming off a bender, I guessed, and that always made him repentant, overly generous. It's cruel of me to take advantage, I know, but I think he owes me something. I said, I'll come over in the morning. He said, sure. I said, what are you watching? He said, the news. But I know it was cartoons. So Robin goes the next morning, and the door is ajar. A skittish woman just stands there in the hall, a key extended in her gloved hand. Dick's neighbor, a singer. She said she'd come to water the plants. Dick told her he'd be visiting friends, but he had no friends, and he had no plants, Robin says. She looks down at her hands. They're folded in her lap. He's gone, she shrugs, and he owes me money. I turn to face the window. So you're a student, my partner says. What do you study? Philosophy? Poetry? No, she turns to face him. She's so patient. I'm not a student anymore. By now it's practically September. The sun is bright but dulled by the dirt on the office window. The trees outside look dumb and virile. Dead leaves are falling in the street. My partner's office is dingy, but he does his best to look the part. His books are worn and hardback. Burke, Descartes, Derrida. This was my office. Now it's his. He's quoting Coleridge. He's so utterly inoffensive. His thoughtful neutrality, his emotions always already recollected in tranquility. It's killing me. Robin doesn't seem to mind, but if she smiles, if she thinks he's charming, I'm certain I'll die of disappointment. It's lunchtime. I look away and say very quickly, this is when Robin looks at me funny. It's like she's wincing. She leans in. She says it. My fiance, she winces. Why? Well, he wants this settled in 2 weeks. We're getting married. And just like that, everything I thought I knew went out the window.
There you stop. If I looked shocked, it was just because I didn't want it to stop. That was amazing. That was so fun. Is this your boathouse pen?
It is my boathouse.
Well, that's not something.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Fascinating. I should also say what I didn't say before, which is that after the reading, we'll take about a 10-minute break where anybody that wants to get cookies or coffee, buy a book over here. And then if some people are not staying, they can leave. And then people like in my chapbook class, for instance, who are staying, will have a conversation with the writers afterwards. So I know Chuck's class and my chapbook class are going to stay. Other people can make their own decisions, including my earlier in the day classes. Okay. So just so I don't say your Any questions? All right. Our second reader tonight is Ray Levy. Ray Levy is the author of School from the University of Alabama Press, fiction collected 2. Negative Space from Spiral Editions, A Book So Read from Cake Train, Necessary Objects from 3 Light Books. Short fictions appear or are forthcoming in Animally, Black Warrior Review, Diagram Fence, Tarpaulin Sky, Territory, Sporazine, Western Humanities Review, and others. The recipient of an NEA Fellowship in Prose, Levy is currently Assistant Professor of English at Illinois State University and a founding editor at Dredgenald. Did I say that right? He lives in Bloomington, Illinois. Ray Levy's School is a self-examining satire, or a satire of self-examination, set in the forms and environs of a graduate program in literature. Describing it in brief is perhaps as impossible as the demand in the section of School titled The Strange Case of the Yale School, How to Review a Movie, in which the demand, and the writer has a keen ear for the demands made by professors on students, to summarize the movie in one provocative yet informative phrase, which yields the epic phrase, a found footage occult horror flick in which the waning relevance of post-structuralist theory drives aging complet professors to Faustian extremes. Who wouldn't want to hear more? Please welcome Ray Levy.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Chuck. Thank you to the English department and Carthage College, and all the students here for having me, and Jessica. Thank you, Jessica, for reading. Okay, so I'm going to read a chapter from my most recent novel, School, that came out maybe a year and a half ago. It's a fairly short chapter, so I thought I'd kind of set it up. I'll say a few words about it first. Well, I want to say a few words about the book first, and then I'll kind of set up what I'm going to read. Because this is like a really hard book to read from for a lot of reasons. It's like a really niche book. It's really experimental, as they say, and it doesn't translate well to reading. A lot of it's like very visual text. And it's like a really humiliating text to read for a lot of reasons. It is fiction, but there's a lot of like auto-fictional elements to it. It's like a novel that's kind of like unloading a lot of like shame I had over being like a bad student and not like, I'm like a difficult personality in the classroom. I was. That's fair, right? I was just unhappy.
Okay.
I mean, that's what it was. I was just an unhappy person. I don't even know why am I introducing my own book this way. This is the problem with this book. I need to write something new so I can have a respectable reading experience. But it's like a book about like feeling like shame in the classroom as a student, feeling highly dysphoric, and that kind of intervening like in the scene of education, and about like it's a novel about transitioning like genders. which I feel like is kind of a personal, shouldn't be a shameful thing to talk about, but often is. So yeah, that's the main kind of like thrust of the book. It's about transitioning in academe, but it's also about like transforming from a student to a professor. So the protagonist both kind of changes genders throughout the course of the novel, but also then leaves his student status behind and becomes a professor himself. So it's also a book about like, what it means to give and receive an education. And some of its main questions are like, what is the status of trans thought in literary studies? And what is the status of trans life in the academy or in higher ed? And I think there's not like a lot of footholds for trans thought or trans life to like flourish in these kinds of spaces. I mean, it's really difficult to like think in a trans way based on the kinds of like intellectual habitats that we inherit from the traditions we study and from our teachers who are trained in them. In any case, so that's kind of what the novel's about as a whole. The story I'm going to read from, like many of the stories in the novel, it like wants to use fiction in a very particular way to interrogate a certain kind of scholarship. I feel like scholarship is always kind of saying things about literature. So I want to write like literature, like stories that actually say something about scholars. Especially because so much of like academic essay work, like articles, kind of disavow or abject the scenes of their own production. Like, you don't learn how much the person was making a year when they were writing that essay, if they were an adjunct, if they were a tenured professor, if their colleagues were trying to fire them in some kind of mob situation. This is a story that interrogates a very particular essay by a philosopher called Jacques Derrida, who's a post-structuralist philosopher, deconstruction, very beloved and famous in the late 90s. His star has kind of fallen a bit. But he has this essay called Autobiographical Animal, which is the title of my story. And it's just this philosophical treatise about like the relationship between humans and animals. But it begins with this strange anecdote where Derrida is talking about the scene of producing his own essay. And he says, I decided to write about this because one day I was taking a bath, my cat was in the bathroom with me, he saw me naked. It's really ridiculous. And it humiliated me. I felt shame, and I thought, why would I feel shame before my cat? And I just found that totally unbelievable. I mean, I've hardly been naked in front of anyone. I've been naked in front of many cats in totally normal ways, but like, I have never once felt shame in front of an animal. I don't believe him, first of all. So I was like, I'm gonna write a story that's basically like setting the record straight about how he wrote that essay. So the narrator of this story is his teaching assistant. Like, it's a graduate student who is kind of like employed as his like personal assistant, kind of TA basically, and is like, I was in that bathroom. I saw him naked. I was like drying him off and helping him get dressed. And that's why he's so ashamed.
Sorry, did you say that? My watch one.
Yeah, and then the other kind of like inner text for this piece is Edgar Allan Poe's Telltale Heart. Because this is a story about a kind of disgruntled employee. A very disgruntled employee. Okay. If you have any questions about it, of course you can ask me later. But hopefully that was somewhat of a okay intro. Okay, autobiographical animal. Jacques was a person in history. Jacques had a little cat. One day, the little cat crept into the bathroom while Jacques was bathing. The cat walked up to the tub, sat down on the floor, and watched. Naturally, Jacques was naked. Jacques saw the cat see his nakedness, and Jacques felt shame. The shame was unusual because it was complex. The complexity took a long time to unpack when Jacques told the story to a room of scholars in 1997. The story was original and emotional. It was humbling and pathetic, but not too pathetic. Jacques' story, the scholars argued, was appropriately pathetic. Also, the story was lovely. It was a lovely, lovely story, but it wasn't true. I know because I was there, in the bathroom, next to the cat. Jacques did not account for my presence. Throughout the history of the West, people have treated animals like garbage. The difference Jacques makes is he said he felt bad. Jacques felt shame. He was naked. He'd been bathing. Now he was ready to exit the bathtub. He rose to a standing position and issued the signal. He used one of his tan fingers, which was bent and dripping, to point at the towel on the rack. Except he didn't point at the towel on the rack. The rack was bare. Fuck. Shit. Where was the towel? Fuck my face off my head. Run a sword through my neck because I'm an asshole. I'm an asshole and I'm stupid. I'm so fucking stupid. The towel was in the dryer. The towel was in the dryer, and the dryer was in the laundry. The laundry was in the alcove, which connected to the kitchen at the opposite end of the estate. Be right back. I turned and I ran. What is a TA? The stick isn't universal, you know. It's not even standard. It's his, and you don't really know him, do you? No, I think you do not. You know the one you serve. You know the one you serve, and I know the one I serve, and the sticks are different. How can I present myself to you without disappearing behind the shadow that is cast by the thought your master built in the miserable fist of your vision? You'll have to take me at my word when I tell you what I am. I'm worthless. Some days get fucked, so what? There wasn't a towel on the rack, and I suppose there was nothing to be done about it. No action under the fucked open sun to make up for the one I should have remembered to accomplish an hour earlier, i.e. retrieve the towel from the dryer and return it to the rack. Jesus fuck. The TA handles basic tasks, okay, such as grading papers or working directly for any professor who by virtue of excessive fame and or age requires day-to-day assistance and emotional support. And I told him not to worry, didn't I? I told him to stay put. Jacques, I said, I'm going to the laundry to get the towel. I'll be back in a jiffy. Well, no, I didn't use the word jiffy. I would never use that word. I cite it now because it's kind of cute and very casual, and that's the way I want you to see me. That's what feels comfortable. You understand. I ran in the direction of the laundry, which connected to the kitchen. And since I've already fucked up the day, I stopped at the fridge and grabbed a can of beer. The beer was a Dale's Pale Ale. I really liked that beer. I stored some in Jacques' refrigerator. Jacques didn't care and he never touched it. He didn't drink much at the end of his life. I went outside to the patio by way of the sliding door in the breakfast nook. I sipped the beer. I smoked a cigarette. The cigarette was an American Spirit from the Goldenrod pack. Upon re-entering the house, I felt looser. The beer had mattered because I hadn't eaten. Plus, I'd already ruined the day, and the ruining felt like relief, you understand. So I strode like Goliath over the expanse of the kitchen to the alcove with the laundry in it, feeling good in the place where my body was meant to exist, or where it supposedly adored, or whatever, it wasn't there. The towel was right where I left it. It was sitting in the dryer, which gave me an idea. I should warm the towel in the dryer. If I warmed the towel in the dryer, then I'd produce time, perhaps 10 minutes or more, which means I could have another beer, and I could smoke again. There's no such thing as a good decision, right? Plus, Jacques would stay where I'd left him. He didn't want to slip on the way out of the tub. Not again. He was waiting for my help. Clenched and curved, he was probably cold and very angry. Cold anger should be enough to make a man want a warm towel. I'd want a warm towel. I speculated that Jacques would want one too. Meanwhile, the cat was just watching him. The cat was spying on the shape of his sex. Spying on the shape of his sex. That's how Jacques talked. I should mention, I didn't care for Jacques' language. I didn't care for the body of his work. I loathed the entirety of his scholarship, pretty much. It itched me. All the time, I was itching. What? It's not like the weight would kill him. Do you need me to say it outright? I was not trying to kill Jacques Derrida. I'm a fiction writer. I write short novels that are technically short stories that resemble scholarly essays about literature, but given the state of the academic job market, see, whatever, fuck you. This story is not an impotent attempt to channel Poe. Okay, Poe's an influence for sure. I'm drawn to the style, mostly the hair and the coats. The neckties are a turnoff, but I love the pants in that photo, the one where he's holding hands with the model skeleton. Look, I wasn't equipped to pull a Poe. I was a TA, you understand? I was a loser who wanted to be looser. I wanted to be a looser loser. So I activated the dryer, setting the timer for 15 minutes, and I grabbed another beer from the fridge, strode like Goliath to the patio, smoked a cigarette, etc. When I returned to the bathroom, I saw the cat. The bit about the cat is true. Jacques never lied about the cat. The cat was watching, and Jacques was blushing. I had the warm towel in my arms, and I presented it to Jacques, my arms with the towel draped over. I held out that entire apparatus, and Jacques grabbed onto it. That's how he maintained his balance. He lifted one foot up and over the lip of the tub. Rachel, he said. I was calling myself Rachel then. Maybe it was due to his accent. I don't know. Whenever Jacques said Rachel, he managed to cram the name into a single syllable. He made the name sound like a curse. It was like he said fuck. And yeah, I love the name fuck. If I didn't have a quote-unquote career, well, if I didn't need it, the money which I funnel into the rent, and all the fucking foods that only serve to prolong the youth of it, the youth of the husk, and the husk will not end, the husk will not end, and by now it should have ended, I swear. It should have ended, but it hasn't ended because it endures. It endures, etc. I changed my name to fuck. I really love that name. The body of Jacques was much colder than I wagered it would be. It was remarkably inflexible, so I helped Jacques walk to the closet, then I invited him to point at the trousers he wanted. I pulled the trousers from the hanger and up and over the lower half of Jacques. And Jacques wore slacks, mind you, high-end slacks, which were not ideal to work with, even on days that didn't get fucked. So, whatever, Jacques couldn't be bent, okay? Like his joints, they were not operative. And yet I triumphed. I dressed Jacques. Then I told him that he really should, at this advanced point in his career, I said he should consider getting himself a pair of joggers. Joggers are user-friendly menswear, pants, that have elastic bands at the ankles and waist. They are baggy, yes, but not in a way that looks bad on a person. They're baggy in a way that's comfortable and forgiving and easy. I think joggers look great, I said. I'd had a lot of beers and spoke at length on the greatness of joggers. In conclusion, I said, joggers look great, they are great, they're fucking great, and we could get you a pair. We could get 2 pairs, Jacques. Jacques frowned. He said he had work to do. That's okay, I said. I told him he could work. You're wrong, said Jacques. I can work, or I can go get joggers. I cannot do both. But you can do both, I said, because you have me. Jacques said, okay, basically Jacques replied that one cannot acquire slacks without going to the store and trying them on. That's what he took issue with, trying them on. Jacques didn't have time to try them on because he had to work. Joggers come in 3 sizes, I replied. Don't you get it? You don't have to try them on. No, Jacques did not get it. He was dumb, totally dumb. Every time he slipped into that stuck state, I would find myself wanting to handle him like an old console, to just hit him, with the flat of my palm. 3 sizes, period, I continued. Fuck, man, I'm telling you the truth. The pants will fit. They'll look great on you. Plus, they'll be so easy for you to manage by yourself, to pull them up, see? I mimed Jacques pulling them up all by himself. And they'll look fucking great. Fine, Jacques said, take my card. Get yourself a pair too. I think you need joggers. No, I said, I think you need joggers. No, you need joggers, he said. You need joggers, I said. Then I said, well, okay, what I did next was I attempted to explain that I did not need joggers by explicating the difference between want and need. Then I realized Jacques understands the difference between want and need because Jacques is a philosopher. Well, he was basically a philosopher-adjacent person, according to some people. In any case, I reasoned, if there's a person inside this closet who doesn't understand the difference between want and need, then that person isn't Jock. That person is me, probably. Therefore, reality is it's somewhat likely that I didn't understand anything, including whatever Jacques was saying. Turns out, Jacques was saying he could see my want. He saw I wanted joggers. He was offering to pay for them, joggers, which, hello, he should pay for them, absolutely. I made $16,000 a year because I worked for Jacques. Cool. I did a little bow. I didn't mean to do it. May I borrow your car? Go, he nodded. I must read now. Then I laughed in his face, because Jacques didn't read. Jacques never read. Jacques placed open books on tabletops, yes, but he didn't look at them. What he did was he paced wildly in their general vicinity for 5 hours, whilst kicking and stepping on the cat. Which, okay, that much is obvious, right? I mean, you've read Jacques' work, it's obvious. He never read anything. He didn't give a shit about animals. Okay. I took the car in the car. I drove to Target. I bought like 8 pairs of joggers and a case of Dale's Pale Ale. Jacques and I were the same size in joggers. Therefore, we shared the pants until the day he died. Or look, whatever, I wore some of them. I was right, they looked fine on him. They looked fucking great. I was grateful. So yeah, I want to use this time to thank him. I want to thank him and pay homage. And I was a TA, fuck you. Jacques didn't tell the truth because Jacques was vain. I hated him. I hated his entire body of work. I hated working for him because it permanently reduced my earning potential, and I had 0 family to bail me out, which was terrible because it was terrifying. But I will not make my fear your burden because you don't care. You don't care, and yet you know. You know the only job a person can get once they've been a TA is, well, they can be a TA again, basically. The pay is shit. Sometimes they don't have enough for the rent, and I'm tenure track, mind you. Still, I believe it is necessary to give thanks because that's the protocol, you understand. Plus, sure, I did want them. I wanted the joggers. I'm being serious. When was the last time someone like Jacques, someone who controls every aspect of your life and your debt and your pay, what I'm saying is, has someone like Jacques ever given something to you? No, not just something. Has a person like Jacques ever given you the thing you wanted? Yes, this story is stupid. Jacques said I could use his car and his credit card to get some joggers, and I got the joggers. That's my story. My story is stupid. In contrast, Jacques' story is false. Jacques wasn't honest, you see, and whatever, he died. The death wasn't noble. I was there for that too. I never liked his style. Jacques wasn't Poe. Jacques wasn't Poe because Jacques wasn't smart and he wasn't talented, and his proclivities were mainstream, and he never read a single book, but fine. None of this is news to you because you've read Jacques' books. I've read Jacques' books. I've read everything. I'm serious. I've read everything. They pay me shit. Okay, Jacques is dead. Also, Jacques was wrong. Jacques was wrong about sex because he was dumb. But once upon a time, his money got me joggers, and I wore the joggers. It felt good. It still feels good. Because it exists. Supposedly it exists. It exists and endures, or whatever. It's just there. It's there, all right. It's there. So thanks, thank you, thanks. Pay me shit and give me tenure now.
Thank you, those were amazing readings. So we'll take that 10-minute break. Please take a look at and buy a book, say hello to the readers, and then in that 10 minutes we'll have a chance for some questions and conversation.